going, man?
I am great. Friday. I feel like I have been really looking forward to this for since the last time. I am on fire. I feel like there are tongues of fire flying out of my head.
Really? Okay, so we shouldn't. Maybe there's not enough time for this. I don't know.
Yeah, this time we've got an hour, I think, right? I have a 2 o'clock. Are we good for an hour? You think?
Oh, next song. Ever tell you about Akira the Don?
No.
He invented a music called Meaning Wave, and he takes thinkers, speakers, philosophers, lecturers, the likes of Marcus Aurelius, to Jordan Peterson, to Joe Rogan, to Terrence McKenna, to I think you're seeing Alan Watts, Naval Ravikant, tons of spoken word clips put over music. And he also releases the instrumental versions as well, which I like to work to and get in the zone to. But that's what we're listening to the David Goggins instrumental.
Love it.
And yeah, man, this is what.
Yeah, you actually you did turn me on to Mark Auger earlier this week, and I do remember looking at his work. And and all those other important speakers and authorities that you've mentioned also I find really really helpful, motivating, and insightful. So yeah, you're absolutely on the right track.
I love this one because when I'm running, you can see it's like 5, 10, 15. So when this song starts, I'm probably just getting ready to start the third mile, right? And I have this thing, I tell Magda, everybody can do 3 miles. You can do that in under a half hour, anybody in moderately good shape,
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not an advanced age, but to go past 3, I think is something to be said, right? And I do 5, right? And somebody will say, go past, 5, whatever. But that's my thing, right? I had to get myself over that. I had a mental hurdle where I just ran 3 miles, and I kind of said, so now I do more, right? But this song here, the non-instrumental one, David Goggins talks about the first time he had to run 100 miles in 24 hours. And it was to qualify for like a 250-mile ultra marathon race through Death Valley. So he was trying to raise money for some fallen soldiers that he was close to and the families. And he wanted to get into this, Death Valley race. And the guy running it said, "Hold up, before you get in this race, because it's pretty hardcore. I know you're a Marine and all, but a SEAL. But you need to do this. You have to run 100 miles in 24 hours or less, and then I'll consider you.
Wow.
I'll consider you for my race." So this story, this song, the marathon, is the spoken word over it is David telling his story of showing up for this thing called the San Diego 100, where it's a mile track, and you just run around it as just a bunch of people show up and run around it as much as they can, right? See how far you can go in 24 hours.
That is an incredible coincidence that you're telling me this kind of a story, but please finish your thought.
Well, I mean, I'm getting into this at that point where I'm about to hit that old threshold, right? So maybe that's why, because I'm just thinking about this and doing the math right now. Maybe that's why I love this song so much at the point in my run when I do, because it's all about staying in it. Because as you can imagine, he didn't have the best of days that day.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'll leave it there. That's
well, I went to my buddy and I went to see the Mets play baseball at Citi Field in Queens, New York, last weekend, and I got the cheap seats. We were 5 rows from the top of the stadium because I, just didn't want to have to worry about any possibility of COVID stuff. We're outdoors and stuff, but why not try to create a little distance. And my buddy says, I know one of the owners. You want to go down to the suite? And I'm totally shocked because I wish that he told me that before we bought the tickets. But I'm loving this whole thing. We go down there. We're watching the entire game from behind home plate. It's never happened to me before. And turns out that this gentleman, I've got his name. I'm going to think of it in a second. David. He was also a triathlon person and was in training and did many of them. Was hit by a truck, had brutally injured, years to get back. As soon as he could, he started to train again to do triathlons, but he also created a foundation to help others with head injuries and to promote the idea of exceeding your physical potential, which is a nice segue because it's an interesting coincidence. That's a lot of what I wanted to talk about today. I wanted to talk about awakening. I wanted to talk about what awakening is and subsequent coincidences that occur. Coincidence is really kind of deceiving. Everybody thinks, oh, there's an accident. Oh, isn't that funny? You want to tell somebody about it. It's actually I don't know why, but clearly it's an observable phenomena that occurs after a person begins their awakening. So, first of all, though, let me thank you, Joe, for your really good and important work. Whether it's on the talent economy, or whether it's about schools, or whether it's about children, you're always uplifting and supporting those important messages. And when I listen to your podcasts, I always feel better. So if for any of our listeners out there who feel that their meds are not doing the job, I would say just listen in because you will feel better. It's the beginning. It's the beginning of your awakening. I think that awakening, which is available to all people, I think it starts with an unusual thing we might not expect. Awakening actually, in my opinion, really begins with an initial feeling that something just isn't right. Something's not right in the world. We spend our lives, we work, we play on the weekends or at night. And then once in a while, we hear a news story or we think about something, we can't really put our finger on it, but we have a feeling, inside that something is just not right. Something's wrong in the world. And then inevitably you really can't avoid that. It becomes like a lingering itch that you need to scratch that pervades and compels you. And that slowly grows into an awareness that people are getting harmed. Maybe you're not getting harmed, or you are, but people are suffering because others are harming them. And I'm specifically talking about that. When I learned that 460,000 children in the United States go missing every year. I mean, I read that a few times. It really took a lot for me to let it sink in. I just did the math before this call. We got 380 million people here in the United States. We got 173 million children. Well, guess what? Every child in this country has a 1 in 173 chance of going away, disappearing forever. That doesn't feel right to me. Something that's just weird. It's like, okay, and all of a sudden now that's cultivating a feeling in my heart. Now I'm going to tell you about alcoholism and how I beat that and how sobriety was literally the trigger to cause my awakening. But when you drink, it very effectively shuts down that feeling. Now, any intoxicant, however you want to think about it, or behavior, this is what we all are here to learn. We begin as a self, as a being, pleasing ourselves, doing the things that give us pleasure. And then at some point, we start to realize that that's not enough. It's lacking. We are seeking a greater degree of satisfaction. And at some point, beings grow and evolve and wake up to the fact that their purpose is service, is to help others. And then beyond that, you really get into a state of complete fearlessness, of complete certainty. You can handle anything. You know, what you want out of life is for others to be happy so that you can be happy. And when there's another that's suffering on some level, you also suffer, unless you're just going to drown it in alcohol. And I'm going to talk about that at the very end. But when this starts to happen, you realize, you know, that evil is real, and you begin that process of intending to help make a change. So I'll pause real quick. Joe, did you want to comment on something?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, no, I listen. I'm really coincidences abound, right? It it's funny. I wrote on the board here before the show, for the recording, whatever you want to call it, the conversation, adulthood choice, and there's kind of a the presentation of a couple options. You know, the door on the left and the door on the right, and I talk about this, and I won't use this metaphor, but I wrote about this in a piece called "The Mirror and the Cape," related to leadership styles. But it's really the same metaphor. You're making a decision, right? And instead of tying the leadership, this is an autonomous, you know, this is your decision. Do you want to go to the left and do what people say, which equals comfort and conformity? And if you go to the right, you're going to build your own adventure. It doesn't matter what anybody else says.
I love that.
I tie that to the adult. I tie that to what you said. It's the adult choice, and I tie that to what you said. What happens between the ages of 16 and 20 in this culture? People become indoctrinated into the alcohol culture. So there you go.
Yeah.
It's not a surprise that people might become very myopic and self-centered at a time where that might not be the natural calling, given that type of indoctrination. That's what you made me think of.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right on. That's that. And when we think about this in the context of awakening, it's a process. It's the development of the self. It's your ability to see more. It's the feeling that, wow, I've actually been asleep, or I've been dead. How did I miss all this? Of course, we want to also embrace all that's good, of course. But the difference between being awake or not being awake, in my opinion, is really the difference between lower consciousness and higher consciousness. And I know that that phrase has some baggage. Of all the words, I think it's the best. It's probably the most suitable for what we're kind of talking about. A conscious being is a sentient being. A sentient being is a living thing that has choice. So plants are not sentient. Humans are. Most animals are sentient, have a choice. They have a choice to move, okay, which is a component, part of the definition of what life or a living organism is. It's really interesting that there are certain kinds of sponges that are considered to not be sentient. So you can see how there's a realm of living things that can make choices, and another realm that do not. Be very thankful that you are human, that you have the opportunity to make a choice, to make that right turn that you mentioned in your words. Consciousness is the currency of the universe. Long pause. Listen, it's really no accident. How do I know? How do we know this? Why can I say such a bold statement? Look, we all agree we're bombarded with messages all day long, advertising, marketing, people telling you what is right, what you should do, what you should buy, where you should go, how you should spend your time. Industry wants your attention. Everybody wants a piece of your attention. Your attention, meaning your ability to use your mind and your perceptions with your senses in order to notice things. Instead of overlooking something, you may notice something. I'm looking at my screen right now. I'm looking at our Zoom call. I'm paying attention to what you're saying. I'm conscious. I'm conscious of you. Okay. If I'm in a room of people and we're all chatting, and then somebody walks into the room and they're grimacing, some people will look up, others may not. Keep talking. Some of the ones who look up may actually feel that person's grimace, that whatever is the cause behind that frown in their body, in their heart, maybe even just a tiny bit. And so others may not feel it, much, but they might wonder, I wonder what's wrong. And that's where I began this conversation. It's a feeling of something it doesn't feel right. Something's not correct. Something needs to change. And then what happens is that you begin, and this is my advice, when you feel that and it becomes irreversible and you want to do something and you start to feel guilty because maybe you haven't done anything ever. It's okay. Don't judge yourself. You must love yourself. There's no time in this short lifespan for self-judgment or self-criticism. It's the biggest pothole we all have to learn how to get through, is how to not criticize ourselves. But I'll tell you right now, it's extraordinarily harmful. So do whatever it takes to stop that. I know it's a big ask.
All right, so let's get back.
You cannot intend anything if there's no self-love.
This is true. So, you're talking about awakening, and I can tie, there's two points where I think I had, that there's something wrong. There's markers in my life. And, they were both also marked by taking that turn. And when I kind of look at the talent economy, maybe it's part of awakening, right? And it's a more excellent way, right? It's entering a state of mind and a higher sense of consciousness, right? I'm gonna use this time I have, right? I'm gonna intend to make something of this aim I have, right? I'm actually gonna create an aim, right? I'm gonna have some sort of goals, and I'm gonna diligently work towards them. And actually, instead of doing these things that are harmful to me, harmful to people around me, not setting me up for a good tomorrow, we're going to stop doing them, right? And the things that are just base, right? Numb, right? The things that don't just, don't do anything. They don't help or harm anybody, including myself, right? So let's just stop all that. And even the fun stuff for the, maybe there's stuff that is moving in a positive direction, but it's random. So redirect that. And so the talent economy is just basically saying, hey, I have an aim, I have free time. So now my new hobby is to focus on my free time on that aim rather than Netflix or gossip or X, Y, and Z. So I've entered these states of consciousness, or that particular vein of consciousness, at least a couple times just before this call. Funny that you should bring up awakening. But yeah, like I've come into that mode of awakening, right? I don't want to say that's my awakening points. I think that's silly. But those are two points where something opened up and then there was a commonality, right? It's kind of out with the things that weren't helping, in with just a focus. And what that focus did is it put you in a new lane. It puts you in a new part of the highway where you're not running with everybody else. You're at a different speed. You're driving a different vehicle, right? It's just totally different. It's easy to get caught back into the, evil's everywhere, right? So that's a really good place to be. It's hard to stay there, but guess what else was connected to both those experiences and the part of the duration of those experiences, a love connection. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but
Yes, that's right. Because this is kind of these, in my opinion, these are what I'm trying to tell people about is, these are the intro classes. These are the best places to start, because almost all of us say, oh, that's impossible. I'm not going to bother. I don't have the time. I don't have the energy. I don't have the money. That'll never happen. I can't afford it. And what we're trying to explain to people vis-a-vis the talent economy is that, nope, that's actually not true. Let's start with the science of neuroplasticity, which is well established in physiology, the ability for the brain to rewire itself. All right. Now, this was not even really understood or known 20, 30 years ago. We have that ability. We have the ability to use the power of our imagination and our minds to do all kinds of things. So we start with not hating ourselves and just start by saying, you know what? I'm pleased with myself. I want to throw out these phrases because they're incredibly powerful. I've used that phrase. I am pleased with myself. Every morning when I wake up, when you wake up, if you can say good morning, if you can say to yourself, I am pleased with myself, everyone agrees that they can agree with the statement, I am pleased with myself, by the way. It's a very particularly architected thing that I learned elsewhere. And when you have that, what a great starting point. What do you intend for that day? I loved your words, Joe. You say, I have an aim and I have got some free time, so I'm going to apply this free time to that aim. Right after someone says that, the first instinct of the psyche, in this case, psychologically, you have we're talking right now about the psyche, whose job it is to survive, to have the body survive. So the psyche, A, does not like to get out of its comfort zone. B, doesn't want to try new things. C, knows that the unknown, that we have fear of the unknown, that that things can, that something bad could happen, that could impact the survivability or the reproducibility of the organism. And that psyche is a consequence of all kinds of tissue throughout your central nervous system, in your brain, your spine, especially in your brain, that cortex, the layer around the surface of your brain. It's kind of like a thick envelope of sorts. And so everything that we're talking about has an actual physical basis. No one should deny that they have the power to leverage neuroplasticity in order to retrain their mind to be happier. Now, I just want to do a quick review because all of this is going somewhere. We, in the first episode of the Meaningcast, I talked about an authentic intention and showing up, because that really is the beginning spot. The very, very beginning spot is loving yourself. And then the second step is to know that anything is possible. If you can do those two things, the whole population of heaven is giving you standing room only right now. That's huge. To love yourself and to know that anything is possible, that opens the door. When you step through the doorway, you step through by having an intention, which is what you said, having an aim. And the way that, and then the way we instrument, the way that we manifest that particular intention, because it doesn't end right there, is that we say to ourselves, we have to get present. We have to be conscious. What does it mean to be present? I like to use the phrase, where are my feet? Let's stop for a second. Where are our feet? Where are my feet? I'm feeling my feet right now. I'm looking at them. I'm wearing sandals. It's a beautiful day out. I'm actually here. I do feel here. I'm talking to you. My feet are here. This is where I am. I'm sitting in this chair. I'm 100% present talking to you right now, Joe, and I'll bet you can feel that. So that was the purpose of Meaningcast Series 1, Episode 1, is that starting place to give people hope for those who are depressed, for those who are anxious, for those who have fear. This is the way out. This is what people have done for thousands of years. You're not going to hear about this on the nightly news, so you got to make an effort. Meaningcast number, the second one the second podcast I did with you is actually episode number 4, and we talked about what I call the next big thing. I described some of my background, how I've been an early adopter, a first mover in technology, going back right after college, and all of these decades later, here we are talking about, people have asked me over the years, well, what is the next big thing? Because I want to get in early so I can make lots of money, or I want to buy the stocks before they become popular. It's a valid question. We all want to get it, we all want to do that. And my opinion is, you're not going to see a Gutenberg's press. You're not going to see the internet. What you're probably going to see as the next big thing is a social change. And I'm not talking about social media, because that's one of the major reasons why this exists. The talent economy is because of the deficits in Facebook and what we're calling today social media. It's a social change will absolutely be the next big thing. And the best name, the best nomenclature I think that we can give to that so we can discuss it is the talent economy. And we're participating in it right now. Talent economy, I think that I'm a pretty good speaker. I feel like I've got some things that I learned the hard way. I'm going to talk about that in a second. And I want to share it with people because I wouldn't want anyone to have to go through what I went through in order to learn this stuff. And the final thing that I really want to emphasize is that it's all possible. It's all possible. You would be shocked. You'd be shocked. You got to study, study, study. So let me back up what I'm saying with an important experience that triggered my, in quotes, awakening. The raising of my vibration is a philosophical way to describe it. The how I got from being depressed to feeling enlivened. Did you have a thought, Joe?
I'm looking forward for you to share, please.
Yeah, okay. I'm trying to pick up on your body language, even though I can't see.
Well, I don't want to take you. I don't want to take you off course. I'm enjoying what you're sharing here. You brought everybody up to speed, right? I mean, this can this can stand alone now. So please continue.
So the talent economy is the next big thing, but that's the physical economy, the actual social interaction amongst human beings that would supersede, that could easily supplant a market economy, as an example. And when you have this, let's imagine for just a second, wouldn't that be so cool? Man, wouldn't that be great to not have to do the same single thing every single day? Instead, you get to do all different kinds of things every day that you enjoy, because there's countless opportunities. And guess what? There are countless people who need what you do well. And you need countless things that all these other people do well. You don't have to have some kind of an exchange currency. Do we have to keep score? Do we have to remember that we're impoverished? When we're told that this world is impoverished, we forget how abundant it is. Now don't get me wrong. There, 1 out of 3 people do not have access to clean drinking water. That statement is real. It often overwhelms people. But I'm talking about the psychological distraction that is of industry that wants our attention, and instead we are led down the path of fear, and therefore we should buy this thing, or we're led down the path of fear. I'll say it again. You can get out of this. You can retrain your mind. The next big thing is peace on earth. That would be the end game. On this planet, if there was peace on earth, oh my goodness. Wow, that would just be, what would that be like? Can you imagine for a second what that would be like? That would be so cool. I don't even know how to describe. I mean, that would be wonderful. But the only way you can get there, the only way we can do this together as a team of all the individuals, 8 billion people on the planet, we have to start with ourselves. We have to cultivate the feeling of peace in our mind, psychologically, physiologically. Okay, that's what I want to talk about, is how we actually do it with our body parts. How do we fabricate peace in our minds? Well, I provided in the last episode, episode 7 of the Meaningcast, you give this a really lovely title, Peace on Earth, a how-to guided intention for meditation. And it's a meditation, right? Listen to that. It describes starting with nothing and ending up with peace on earth. If each person, when each person begins the process of using meditation to achieve supra-normal capabilities, when people discover that they can actually perform, I say supra, not necessarily supernatural, but beyond what we're normally used to, when people discover that that is actually possible physically, the first thing that people are going to think of is not how can I gain an edge? How can I get leverage over something else? People are going to discover that the way they got there is by putting the thought and therefore the feeling of the word peace in their mind, thinking about it visually with lots of emotionally charged graphics and meaning and feeling it. That's what will end up happening. Once you start to have coincidences happen to you, that's the beginning. That tells you two things. One is that supranormal capability is an inevitability, is starting to happen, and that it also confirms for you that your awakening has really begun. So praise yourself, however you got there. It's a very beneficial thing, not just for you, but for all of us. It's the talent economy. The talent economy, at the end of the day, is about peace on earth. Now, right in starting in high school, going right up until age 40, I drank. I drank and drank and drank. I was not pleased with the world. I could not find meaning in it. It didn't make any sense to me. There was way too much poverty and trouble and others harming others. And, and if something needed to be done, but it couldn't make money, it didn't get done. So you have all the, million people die from malaria every single year. And it's, and I don't want to get into this, right? Because there's all these different industries that just basically provoke more of the same. Our healthcare industry has a conflict of interest. In theory, it's trying to cure disease, but at the same time, it needs to make money doing that. So disease is essential to the healthcare industry. That's just one thing, but the point is that we begin there. We begin with the feeling that something's not right, and we don't just stay there. And hopefully, we just don't drown our sorrow in alcohol. I did for a very long time, 25 years every day. And then, I started to gain some weight. I'm now 40 years old. My body doesn't really respond to alcohol like it was. I would need a minimum of 6 beers to catch a buzz. And guess what? And that was great. I thought that was a very smart idea. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to get out of bed. I'd feel so depressed, I wouldn't be able to function. Alcohol helped me to just dampen all that so I could work. But what happened is that I had to drink more and more and more in order to have that feeling of elation and the suppression of those not so good emotions. So, and guess what happens when you go to a party and you arrive, or let's say you go to a meeting, or no, not a meeting. Let's say you go somewhere social and you've drank in 6 beers to get a head start on the party. Guess what? You stink. You smell. Your breath is awful. It travels 10 feet. You can't live and drink that much and hope that others are going to listen to you, respect you, maybe over the phone, if you're not slurring your speech. So I thought to myself, damn, this is crazy. And people started to tell me, like, what's going on? You're drinking a lot. And I said, well, I'm did you drink today? I said, yeah. I said, I'm trying to catch my 5 o'clock buzz. And I would make a joke out of it. But after a couple of years of that, I thought, and I'm gaining weight, and I'm looking at the calories that I'm ingesting every day. What it was like 1,000 calories on top of all the stuff that I was actually, eating. And I would exercise and I would go on diets, and I realized, and maybe I could lose some weight, but I realized unless I get rid of this 1,000 calories, there is no way that I'm going to be able to get into shape. And I'm getting older and I really want to do that. And I'm lacking energy. And the benefit that this alcohol is bringing me is getting outweighed by the costs. And then I realized, so that was the beginning of me realizing that something was not right. And then I thought, oh shit, this sucks. I'm not going to be able to do that. I can't imagine how I could possibly stop drinking. Drinking is as important as sleep to me. There's just no chance. But my friend took me to my first AA meeting, Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. I had nothing to lose. You have to be sober when you go to a meeting. So, I drank ahead of time and I drank after, but I made sure my breath didn't smell with mints and stuff like that. And then I realized, basically in an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, like any 12-step program, 12 steps programs are really terrific means by which people can cure their own addictions and achieve all kinds of things. So it's a general category. AA meetings were started in the 1950s by people who had no money. They didn't even know really what they were doing. They just simply got together and told their story about their alcoholism, and everybody crossed their fingers and hoped that telling stories might provide some kind of cure. Guess what? It does. Telling a story or listening to a story is very healing. And now it's, 60, 70 years later, this is, there are AA meetings at every time of the day in your city, no matter where you are. It's an astounding success of achieving very significant benefits, miraculous benefits, healings with no money. So I went to another meeting. I heard some stories and I thought, of course I'm not alone. Isn't this interesting? I went to a couple more meetings on my own, so I didn't have to drive all the way to my friend's house. And if it was pretty easy, I mean, on the internet, just find a meeting. It's so simple. And I found them comforting. You learn a lot. I learned, for example, that the craving to drink is mostly born of the feeling of feeling bored, of feeling lonely, or of being hungry. When I discovered this, and I feel like I'm a pretty educated person, I was shocked that I did not already know this. I felt like I knew everything about alcoholism, and I didn't. So luckily I was going to these meetings, and that's the best education, because all these people have already done years and years of research. They're still going to meetings, or at least a lot of them are, not all of them. And I wasn't lonely, and I've never been bored, but yeah, I have a tremendous appetite. And if I was not near a place that I could get a meal, because I don't really cook, and that's a whole thing that I got to improve upon, and I intend to do better at that. But I would be hungry. I'd be hungry at 4 o'clock, have a beer, have a drink. It would not only temporarily satiate my appetite, but it anesthetizes. It dampens the negative feelings, but it also reduces the appetite. And well, you're actually satiating your appetite with sugar, alcohol, sugar, but and that's incredibly unhealthy. But that was really driving a lot of my drinking, in addition to the desire to function by just reducing and blanketing my attention and how I felt, submerging my feelings. So I realized I had to somehow get rid of this 1,000 calories a day. So I thought to myself, oh, I'll just switch what I drink. And so I switched to Bacardi rum. It's 151 proof. And my logic back then was, well, this has no carbs and I'm drinking less of it. So I'm actually going to be putting less calories into my body. This is what all of us do. We invent these, we rationalize, we invent excuses. We think that this is some scientifically based rationale for doing something that on some level we know we really need to not do and do something differently instead. And then things got really bad pretty quickly. The liquor stores near my house would not sell it to me. I had to travel to other towns in order to pick up bottles. When I did, I'd buy 3 at a time. I would pretty much go through a quarter of a bottle a day. I felt great. But then again, I felt terrible. I felt terrible. And my breath was awful. And I really noticed that things needed to change, but I had no idea how I could change them. I didn't think it was possible for me to change. That's why I emphasize all the time, just begin with the notion that anything's possible. You got nothing to lose. And besides, things have happened to you that you never would have expected. So why stop now? Why put the kibosh on maybe this won't happen, or I can't afford to go on that vacation? Just keep your mind open. That's all. Allow the universe to do the work. I don't want to get new age on anybody. There's no point in doing that. Everything that I'm talking about is physically substantiated with science. And I try to stop and make sure that I'm always referencing these things. And then, one morning, I knew that my wife would be out. She was at work. I knew that my kids would be at school. It was the fall. I love college football. My favorite game of the year was coming on. I had recorded it on the DVR, and I was all set to party at 8:30 in the morning. Turned on that game. I had my big gulp, what is that, a 40 ounce cup of rum and Coke, and never got out of my pajamas. And I passed out, and I was woken up by my 10-year-old on the couch. And I was still I had been sleeping apparently for like 6 hours. I still was incredibly drunk. I couldn't talk. I was so drunk. I wasn't just slurring my speech, like I couldn't get the words out. And he didn't, being young, he didn't realize, he didn't know. And I just felt so sad. I was so sad. That was the trigger. That was the beginning, really, of the awakening. That night is the night that I called my friend, and he took me to the AA meeting. And I didn't know how I was going to get there, but I knew that I needed to get sober. I knew that I needed to stop drinking this much. I knew that drinking occupied a lot of time, and I would need to fill that time back with something else. So I just kind of, I started to sing to myself, put on music that I would enjoy, that I could sing to. And every time that I had a craving, I would sing. Now, it got a little annoying for my family, so I'd have to do it, in private, or I did it while I was driving, or, go outside, take a walk and sing. The song is already in my head, and singing is incredibly therapeutic. Boy, if that was in our doctor's kit bag, we would see some very surprising global results. But the next thing that started to happen is that these coincidences started to happen to me, like several times throughout the day. I mean, we've all had coincidences. If I was to ask you, Joe, let me ask you, like, when was the last time that a really significant coincidence happened, other than the one that we started with?
Today.
It did happen today.
It happens to me all the time, yeah.
All the time. And there are people who, maybe it was a couple years ago, but it's a very, very interesting phenomenon. I've spent a lot of time trying to figure out and researching what others think about coincidences, and what is that? What is that? Why do I feel that two seemingly unrelated events have meaning? That's our definition of a coincidence. Oh, that was an accident. It wasn't meant to happen. Well, when you start to raise your vibration by drinking less, and it makes sense. Drinking was like a cement blanket that I would wrap myself around in. Imagine what that must feel like, a wet cement blanket. You're not moving anywhere quick. You take off the wet cement blanket, and now you can move around. You're lighter. You feel better. Your vibration has been raised. The word vibration is useful. I must digress for just a moment. When we talk about vibration, we don't want to, please don't equate that with New Age. That's baggage. That's going to hold you back. A better way to think about vibration is the fact that everything in the universe is actually various formations or architectures of energy. We know this is true. This is where the atom bomb came from. Einstein and Heisenberg and Bohr and all those scientists at the turn of the 1900s taught us this, right? E = mc squared. If you took a tiny, tiny piece of matter and you split just one atom in that piece of matter, you would get a gigantic amount of energy release. A single atom in Hiroshima in 1945 released 100 megatons of energy. So, go ahead.
Jim, have you ever heard of a network chiropractic?
I've not. Tell me.
So you mentioned it has to do with vibrations and what you're talking about with the power of things. The one of the things that opened me up to the possibilities is met this guy by the name of Dr. Jeffrey Lubowitz, very randomly at a health food store in 2006. And I was just there to eat some food with my wife, but he was doing a demo. Never really thought of a chiropractor before. So we walked back, see people seemed interested. And not only was it a chiropractor doing a demo, literally something I never thought of, but it was the most fringe form of chiropractic or at least what I've come to know as the most for it's called network. And basically, you started talking about the physiology a little bit ago about how everything's connected in the body, right? These tissues, and so network chiropractic is working off those vibrations and those connections, and knowing about the connections, and knowing about vibration, and knowing about everything you're talking about, and then using not force at all, but the lightest feather type touches on the right areas, with the right flick and the right push in the right direction at the right time, with the encounter position with this little flick or touch or push, very gently, non-force. It's really interesting, and it plays off what you're talking about, that everything's connected. So anyway.
No, so yes, acupressure, acupuncture, tapping.
Yes, exactly.
There are, let's face it, right? The I don't want to say the Asian. I mean, I know the Chinese historically can go back. They can trace this medicine to about 600, 700 BC. I mean, this has been practiced for a long time. Now, I don't know. Can I make lots of money here in the United States by being a network chiropractor? Unfortunately, no. Your friend who is dedicating his life and doesn't care because he knows that this is the most important thing that he should be doing with his time. This is what his aim is going to do it regardless. And maybe you have seen posters, diagrams of the human body and the central nervous system with all of the tiny nerves that end up at our fingertips and can detect wetness or all these different things. And yeah, our bodies are completely connected. And the fact is that everything is connected. Everything we see is connected. It's all energy, but it's just an inconvenient way to describe our lives. Because think about this, right? 70% of our body is water, but we don't call ourselves walking water balloons. It's inconvenient. Same thing with any kind of matter. It's composed of atoms. It's certainly composed of a lot more energy than it is atoms. That's the definition. That's why light traveling at the speed, matter traveling at the speed of light can become energy. It's the other format. Okay.
No, I really appreciate you sharing what you did. We talk about energy, and you mentioned the comments that you got about, "Hey Jim, you all right?" Right?
Yeah. Right.
That was amongst pretty much generally numb people, right? I mean, the general population. We're not talking about the general higher consciousness population, right? So just imagine the ends of the spectrum, right? There you are on one end. You have network chiropractors and other people, and other such enlightened, people, and people in touch with vibrations, and that the connection of everything at the other end. And then even the people that were giving you the heads up, I'm not sure how close in the middle they are, right? And if they are in the middle, it's not a very good looking average. And this isn't to speak ill of your social circle, but it talks to the general numbness, right? The awakened population is pretty small, but I think you said it's not going to be a Gutenberg revolution. It's going to be a social revolution, and sharing, right? Is what might, in these circles, in these communities, in these economies, maybe that's a way to accelerate things. But yeah, I mean, I appreciate you sharing that. And then the energy thing's so true. And that's where my mind went. And you talk about awakening to start things off. That's exactly where I was talking. That's exactly where I'm at with the talent economy in terms of the first step to hop in there.
That's right.
And I've had my own experiences. I've been sober for months, right?
Is that right?
Didn't have a moment as such, I didn't have a moment like yours per se, but it drifted away from me for the same exact reasons, right? So yeah, it's I just realized I couldn't get done the things in life I needed to get done if I was going to just have even just a little, even just use it as again, bored, right? I wasn't having the volume, right? But a couple beers was enough to turn off that creative juice that you're trying to, so I was in a mode of awakening and noticing that, even just as a little bit, on a social, or just to take the edge off at night,
was enough to start fresh the next day. There was no building off anything else, right? Because you wiped it out, right? So there was none of this momentum that I was looking for. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, absolutely. And it's terrific, Joe, to hear of your hard self-work to get sober. I've been sober now for since November 8th, 2007. And I don't know, what is that? 14 years. I still have cravings. I have cravings every day. I have cravings every day. And what I want to tell everybody is that you can make it. You can actually be sober and not drink and live with your cravings. I would imagine that it may be something like grief, where grief, the loss of a loved one, for example, doesn't go away. It does diminish. You learn how to live with it. It teaches you so much. I wouldn't wish that upon anybody, but for those who are experiencing grief, it's very similar. I'm dealing with cravings. I see TV commercials. I had to actually stop going to the AA meetings because people would come there and they'd say, "Oh yeah, I went to this barbecue and the cooler was filled with all these frosty cold ones, and I picked up the can, but I didn't pull the cap off because I knew that was going to make a crack and a sound, and I was like wanting to drink in these meetings, so it affected me a little differently. But if I may, let me tell you more about the value that happens when we share our stories. We're getting to this place of the sharing economy. We are waking up. We're feeling that something is not right. We want to do something. Maybe we feel guilty about it. We have an intention, an aim to do something, and then maybe we're lost or we get overwhelmed. And what we're trying to say is that in these 4 podcasts, we have literally physical instrumentation to get from a place where you feel anxious, depressed, overwhelmed, sad, and that gets changed. That gets changed by the miracle of selfless service. In Alcoholics Anonymous, you're supposed to do a bunch of things. There's 12 steps and all these different things. One of them is you're supposed to get a sponsor. That means someone else in your meeting group who has been through the whole program and is still going to meetings with the ostensible intention to help others. And so that means that they give you their phone number. When you have a craving, you can call them anytime. When you get to a level of like a sponsor, I mean, this is a very unselfish type of thing. You are literally telling those who are still afflicted, call me anytime. Typically, you're going to call me in the middle of the night. I know what that's like. I've been there, and I will make sure that I will keep my phone by my bedside in the event you need to call me. Wow, that blew my mind. I was thinking, this is not just some average person off the street offering me help. This is an institutionalized process that costs no money, that people together as a group figured out sometime in the 50s. And it turns out that telling stories or listening to stories is very healing. Who would have thought? So this example of being a sponsor is an example, a real example of how this person raised their vibration. They stopped drinking. They had an aim. That aim invariably was not about self-pleasure. It was about helping others, about having the same concerns for the concerns of others became your concern. That when another suffered, on some level, you felt like you were suffering and you had to do something about it. You were compelled. And guess what? When you're compelled to do something, that can turn into an obsession. And this is a good obsession. The love obsession, the incredible, insatiable desire to help another person so that they feel better and consequently you feel better, is the social process. This is how we raise our vibration. People say, oh, if you help somebody, if you volunteer your time at the shelter, what have you, you'll feel better. Don't dismiss that. It's really true. I mean, yeah, you can take Xanax. That has its place. Hopefully not too much of it. But can you imagine how quickly peace on earth could be achieved through the awakening of the population, which is really geometric. I heard you say earlier, just, there's not that many people awakened. I would, with all due respect, I completely disagree. 20 years ago, my buddy and I were having this kind of a conversation, and it felt like it was just the two of us. I'm being a little dramatic, but it's like was before the internet, right? Or more than 20 years ago, but before the internet, we didn't have the ability to notice all of the others like you, all of the other alcoholics, all of the other solutions, all of the examples of supernormal behavior. It really felt like we were in a pocket in Hoboken at a bar, and maybe we were the only ones in town, possibly all of New Jersey, even thinking about the notion that people are awake. And today, I've been thinking about this for 25 years. Like, I'm trying to figure out what is the calculus behind 8 billion people being woke. I'll tell you the truth, it's very encouraging. I don't know exactly. I really couldn't figure that out. I also felt that the math was too, it was not substantiated. I didn't feel like I could document it in any reasonable way that I could have a conversation with an academic. So I didn't, but clearly you've got a lot of people like yourself who are trying and wanting and doing the best for other people. This is called the great work. Ancient people, ancient civilizations would call this the great work. And I feel incredibly blessed to be able to talk about it. I'm going to leave you with one thought, because I have an intention to end this meeting on, in 5 minutes, so that it's just an hour. The guided meditation to achieve peace in your head and therefore peace on earth took about an hour and a half. And I think that might've been a little too long for people, but if you're looking for the roadmap, that's the roadmap in the Meaningcast. Go back. I'm going to leave everybody with, I'm going to call this the bomb. I'm about to drop the bomb. It's not what you're expecting. It's going to sound trivial. All right, well, we've talked about all these different things. We've talked about where our feet are, and breathing and meditating and using the power of emotional imagery and the power of emotional words in our minds, using our imagination in our own voice is a general way to raise our vibrations, because everything is connected, because everything is proven by physicists over 120 years ago that in fact everything is connected. There is no real empty space. Even if you've got the most powerful vacuum in the world, you still can detect infrared energy. Okay, Buckminster Fuller talked a lot about this. Dr. Edwin Mitchell talked a lot about this. It's not contested. Okay, people have built these things called Ferrier vaults, I think is what they're called. It's after the name of that electricity physicist from the late 1800s. I call it a vault. It's actually called a box. But the idea is that, in science, sometimes you need to build a thing where nothing exists inside of it, right? You have to build a vacuum. So it's got powerful vacuums, and no kind of radiation is supposed to penetrate it. Well, I'm sorry, you're wrong. Gamma radiation is going to go right through that baby. There's also thermals in there that you cannot, on everything radiates energy. This is what the quantum physicists taught us. You've got particles being released from your body. They're pragmatically invisible. They're electrons. Scientists say that they have no mass, that they weigh nothing. All things that are physical, meaning they're composed of matter and not all energy, that would be the opposite, are literally emitting energy, whether you like it or not, whether or not you've got a super powerful vacuum or you've got a Ferrier box or any of these other things. And that is the reason, physically, scientifically, it's been proven why we're all connected. It gets overlooked. But now it's time for the bomb. If I was asked, okay, your information sounds very interesting, and I am resonating with it, and I've actually started to pay attention a little bit, and I am noticing that there are coincidences. I'm getting weird messages somehow. I think about something, and then that same verbal thought in my mind appears on the television at the same time. I'm thinking about a person who I want to help. They call me. I need a broom to sweep to help someone sweep out their space because they're drowning in their litter. That broom shows up for some reason. It's outside the door. I didn't know it was there. These things are coincidences. Are they really coincidences? Doesn't matter. Just keep paying attention, because when you notice that your coincidences start to move into the realm of uber coincidence, you are doing great. That's your proof. We need a sign. We need proof. It helps us to have faith. It helps us to carry on. It gives us hope. That's what I'm telling you all. There's hope. Here's what you do. I've only got 1 minute left. Tonight, tomorrow, make a point. Do yourself a favor. Get yourself a journal. Get yourself a journal that is beautiful, that has a nice cover that you could see yourself writing in. The quality of the pages, the paper feels good to the touch. Go to the store. Take a look. Get one that you can afford, a blank book. And, either in the morning or at night or whenever, it doesn't really matter, start to write down 5 things that you appreciate. Now, if there ever was a magic spell, this simple technique truly is it. If I did this, I started to write down what I appreciate. My wife made this great meal last night of meatballs and spaghetti. My boss said a kind thing to me today. I got lots of sleep last night. Something useful, though. You don't want to say, oh, I was happy yesterday. That's not going to give you the energetics that will raise your vibration. But if you take the time to think about it, and this should only really take a couple of minutes, and hopefully you do have things to appreciate. If you don't, that's your next step. Your next move is to do something for somebody so that you can have something to appreciate. But if you do this 5 times a day in your journal, very quickly, you're going to see many pages after a couple of weeks of all these things, and you're going to start to read through them again, and you will feel better. You will not maybe have cured your depression, but you will realize, wait a minute, there's a physical process using neuroplasticity to my advantage that I can change how I feel and change depression, anxiety, fear into happiness, cooperation, fearlessness, and certainty. Wouldn't it be great to walk into a meeting and know that you will exceed, that you will excel in this meeting because you're certain of it? All right, Joe, that's all I had time for. Thank you again.
Talk to you later, Jim.
I'll talk to you hopefully. I'm out next week, but we'll do it as soon as I get back. Thanks again, everybody.
Take care.
Love you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.